Hello, hi, and howdy. Welcome to the 5th episode of English Out and About. In this video series, we will share historical and cultural information about the United States. And along the way, you will be learning English. In today's episode, our language focus is on using the passive and active voice. We will visit Atlanta, Georgia, and discuss some important events in the civil rights movement. Now, my name is Jane, and I will be your guide. Mystery reporter Maggie and field reporter Francesca will show us different parts of the United States, and English teacher Tina will explain some of the trickier aspects of English. Idiom alert! Each time we get together, I like to share a common idiomatic expression, and then you can listen for the phrase and how it is used in context during the episode. This week, I'd like to share 2 expressions that kind of go together: make waves and rock the boat. Neither idiom has anything to do with water, the ocean, or being on a boat. They both mean to cause a disturbance or to disrupt the status quo. Listen to today's episode to hear them used in context. Now, let's go to English teacher Tina, who has today's English focus, which is the active and passive voice.
Hi everyone, I'm teacher Tina. Welcome to today's show about using the active and passive voice in English. I hope by the end of the episode, you'll be able to tell the difference between active and passive sentences. This is especially important if you need to write in English for school or if you're trying to improve your academic writing. All right, let's get started. English is a language that has a subject, verb, object sentence structure. Subject, verb, object. Here's an example. The rat eats the pizza. The rat eats the pizza. The subject is rat. The verb is eats. The object is pizza. The rat eats the pizza. In active voice, the subject, the rat, performs an action stated by the verb, eats. The rat eats the pizza. Let's hear the same sentence in passive voice. The pizza is eaten by the rat. The pizza is eaten by the rat. In passive voice, the subject, the pizza, is acted upon by the verb. Both sentences are technically correct, but as a rule of thumb, the active voice is clear, stronger, and less confusing. I always try to encourage my English language learners to use the active voice. Remember, subject, verb, object. Subject, verb, object. All right, that's all the time we have for now. I'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you, teacher Tina. Now, viewers, as you listen to the rest of the show, see if you can find the answers to these 2 questions. Why were people marching in Selma, Alabama in 1965? What are 2 examples of nonviolent activism? Over to you, field reporter Francesca.
Hi everyone! I am thrilled to be reporting to you from Atlanta, Georgia, also known as Hotlanta, because, well, here in the South, it can get pretty hot. More specifically, I am coming to you from Martin Luther King Jr. National Park. The park is actually a section of the city in downtown Atlanta. It is where Martin Luther King Jr. grew up, worked, and is buried. In the park, there is a statue of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was an activist in India, and he led a peaceful movement that resulted in India's freedom from Great Britain's colonial rule. Though the 2 men never met, Gandhi's idea of social change through nonviolent activism profoundly influenced Martin Luther King. Some examples of nonviolent activism are boycotts, marches, protest art and music, community education, sit-ins, and diplomatic sanctions. Today, I want to tell you about another civil rights activist named John Lewis. John Lewis was a friend of Martin Luther King Jr. He was a brave man who was definitely not afraid to make waves. And like MLK, he believed in the power of nonviolent activism. This is the story of how March 7th, 1965 became known as Bloody Sunday. As a young man, John Lewis led many marches, sit-ins, and other forms of nonviolent protest. On that day, Lewis and about 600 people met in downtown Selma, Alabama. They had decided to bring attention to voter discrimination. Lewis and the protesters planned to walk through downtown Selma and then across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. As they started walking across the bridge, the protesters were ordered to stop by the police. Shortly after that, protesters were ordered to disperse. And then they were beaten, whipped, and tear gassed. By the time it was over, 58 people were injured, including John Lewis. A week later, John Lewis recounted the attack in front of a federal court. 2 weeks later, over 3,200 people united for another march from Selma to the state capitol, which became a turning point in the civil rights movement in the United States. The power of nonviolent activism is evident today in all corners of the globe. Have you ever attended a protest or taken part in a boycott? This is field reporter Francesca signing off from Atlanta. So long, farewell, and happy trails. Back to you, Jane.
Thanks. Did you hear the answers to our 2 comprehension questions? Why were people marching in Selma, Alabama in 1965? They were marching to protest against voter discrimination. What are 2 examples of nonviolent activism? Field reporter Francesca mentioned 6 examples of nonviolent activism. You could answer with any of these: boycotts, marches, protest art and music, community education, sit-ins, or diplomatic sanctions. And now we're going back to teacher Tina, who is going to take a look at how Francesca presented this information. For more on the active and passive voice, over to you, teacher Tina.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Did you hear field reporter Francesca use passive voice? I did. Let's take a listen.
The protesters were ordered to stop by the police. Shortly after that, protesters were ordered to disperse. And then they were beaten, whipped, and tear gassed. By the time it was over, 58 people were injured, including John Lewis.
I wonder why she chose to use passive voice. Let's look at these sentences in active voice. In passive voice, the sentence is, the protesters were ordered to stop by the police. Remember, subject, verb, object. So the active voice looks like this. The police ordered the protesters to stop. Subject, verb, object. The police ordered the protesters to stop. Here's another one. Can anybody change this sentence to active voice? Let's do it together. Let's start with the passive voice. Passive voice. The protesters were ordered to disperse by the police. The protesters were ordered to disperse by the police. Here's the sentence in active voice. The police ordered the protesters to disperse. The police ordered the protesters to disperse. Which one of these sentences uses active voice? The police ordered the protesters to stop. The protesters were ordered to stop by the police. Did you guess the police ordered the protesters to stop? Great work! Let's do another one. Number 2. Which one of these sentences is in the active voice? The protesters were ordered to disperse by the police. The police ordered the protesters to disperse. Did you guess the police ordered the protesters to disperse? Great work! I think I know why field reporter Francesca used passive voice. Let's ask her just to make sure. Why do you think she used passive voice? Who was the focus of the report? Just as we thought. Field reporter Francesca wanted to keep the focus on the protesters, the activists. So she used the passive voice. So remember to always try to use active voice for clear, straightforward communication. Subject, verb, object. However, passive voice does sometimes have a place. All right, that's all for now. Back to you, Jane.
Thanks, Tina. And remember that if you want more practice with the active voice and passive voice, there are additional free resources for teachers and students linked below the video. And now it's time to find out what mystery reporter Maggie has been up to. Over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Jane, and welcome, viewers. You know me, I'm mystery reporter Maggie, and I have a passion for mysteries, riddles, games, and accessories. Let's face it, I'm passionate about a lot of things, which fits right in with the culture focus this week, activism. You've been talking about making waves and rocking the boat, right? Well, I have some riddles for you about change. Are you ready? What regularly changes shape, yet remains a sphere? Is always there, but often not seen. Regularly changes shape, but remains a sphere, is always there, but often not seen. Are you ready for the answer? It's the moon. Don't you just love it? Okay, are you ready for the next one? Here it is. No matter how little or how much you use me, you change me every month. What am I? You can use me a little or you can use me a lot, but you change me every month. I'm a calendar. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have. See you next week, where we'll be learning about a very interesting mystery. Back to you, Jane.
Thanks, Maggie. And now for our final minute, we want to show some images from 5 states. This week, we are featuring Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Missouri. Marvelous! Again, teachers, please remember that there are additional resources that you can use with your classes linked in the video description. And students, check out the extra practice. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you next week when we visit Colorado to learn about the Mesa Verde ruins and how to use tag questions. I'll see you soon.